So we're on part 2 of our manifesting through relaxation, and today we're talking about the importance of a spiritual perspective. It's not just using that spiritual perspective when you come to this room or pick up a spiritual book. It's through all of life that this spiritual perspective, I probably should have named this something else because I trip over that word. This spiritual perspective comes into play. It greatly enhances your whole experience of life. Last week in part 1 we talked about visioning and being sure to include the feel it as if it's done already, right here, right now, getting all the details, seeing what your intention, whatever you're visioning for, seeing what it looks like, hearing the sounds associated with it, smelling smells that might be associated with it, just fully experiencing it. And that visioning process is extremely important as a first step, no matter what you're trying to bring into manifestation. The problem with visioning is we can get caught up in visioning just, since we're looking at what it looks like, what it feels like, what it smells like, what it sounds like, since we're looking at it from that point of view, it's real easy to get stuck in the material visioning. So even in our visioning, we want to kick that up. I mean, we can start there. That starting on the material level is a beautiful place to start because it really does get us in touch with that thing. But we have to kick it up. As my favorite chef says, kick it up a notch. Emerald Lagasse. We have to start looking at things, our visions, our experience of life, everything, through a spiritual perspective. The reason I keep harping on this is there are 2 ways to look at everything. One is through the human perspective, which involves trying to achieve things that need to be done through an effort of our own. So even if we're just trying to understand something, if we do that through a human perspective, we spend all of our energies trying to do it on our own. Sometimes we get to a pretty good understanding, sometimes we just feel baffled, but it's still through an effort of our own. Now, if that was the only choice we had, this manifestation through relaxation would just be a bunch of hogwash. It would be impossible. But that's not our only option. The other option we have is through the spiritual perspective. And in this spiritual perspective, we open to the divine within us. We open to the divine in that thing, whatever it is we're trying to manifest. We realize the divine oneness that is already there. We realize in truth it already exists, which makes our visioning easier. It makes our experience full. In this spiritual perspective, we get to relax because in the relaxation we calm our mind, we calm our thoughts. And when we calm our mind and our thoughts, we're not caught up in the human interpretation of what's going on around us, which just clogs up the whole avenue towards that which we want to manifest. This first option, if we look at it through the human perspective, it puts the burden of manifestation on us. We have this opportunity to not manifest what we want when we go at it through a human perspective. Because our thoughts can be on these, even though it feels like and looks like we're thinking in alignment with that thing that we're trying to manifest, very possibly we have a good focus on the illusion of lack. We want to manifest that out there. Our human mind says, well, if we want to manifest that out there, that means we don't have it. That means there's separation. That means there's a gap. And our burden becomes, how do we bridge that gap? And if we're looking at it from a human point of view, a lot of times we cannot find a bridge across that unless something external happens. If what I want to manifest is a new car, the gap initially may be the money involved. And from a human's perspective, I've got to go find that money to buy that. So if that's the case, then my visioning should be about money. You know, the spiritual takes that burden off of us. The spiritual allows us to experience that new car, that money, whatever it is we want to manifest, experience it right here, right now. In the spiritual perspective, we relax and we know that all will be manifest, or all is manifest. And I'm sorry for messing with this microphone. It's new and it's not fitting quite right. So, in the spiritual, we get to relax into it, and we know that all is already manifest, and we're not concerned with the timing. We're not concerned with the how. We're not concerned with anything other than visualizing and experience that manifestation as already done. Because the truth is, folks, if you can think it, if you can desire it, if you can want it, it already exists. Thoughts create. Thoughts create. Therefore, if you have thought it, you've already created it. It's already made manifest in the spiritual realm. And when we look at things through the spiritual perspective, we can experience it right here, right now. We do not have to wait. When we put our human efforts into it, we can find ourselves feeling anxious. We can find ourselves struggling. We can find ourselves worried, fearful. All because we put the pressure on ourselves to take that which we imagined and bring it into the material world. Okay? That's what happens when we look at it through human perspective. We put the pressure on ourselves. I know this is hard to believe, because I have a hard time believing it. I have to remind myself of it constantly. Those things that I think I want, and I think that I have to work hard to get, and that I think that I have to go and do A, B, C, D, and E in order to get it into my life. I cheat myself out of the experience that is already in place. We don't really want that thing out there. We want the experience of that thing. That's what we're after, is the experience. And we can have the experience right now when we look at things through the spiritual perspective. Because when we look at it through the spiritual perspective, we see two things. Number one, it is truth. And number two, there are no limits. If we look at it through the human perspective, we say, oh, well, maybe that'll happen, or maybe if I do this, that'll happen, or maybe that won't happen. There's questions, there's confusion, there's chaotic thinking. And even when we do manifest it into our human experience, our material expenses, if we're looking at it through the human perspective, there will be limits to that experience. You might, if you're thinking about a car, you might see a little ding on your door. Oh, that just took away from my whole experience. It might get muddy. Oh my goodness, my whole experience is ruined until I get it washed. We keep adding things that, okay, well, I have to do this in order to hang on to that experience. Spiritual perspectives allows us to see the entirety of that manifestation, already done and fully whole, complete. When we look at things through our human perspective, we leave God out. We don't leave room in the equation for divine guidance, divine participation. We get so caught up in what do I have to do on my next step to make this come to me. It's already to you. And when we look at it in any way other than our spiritual perspective, our true perspective, we leave God out. In fact, this is I was just reminded of a I don't know what you call it when letters come together to stand for something. Somebody told me once that ego, interpreted perfectly, was edging God out. When we're looking at things through our human perspective, we're looking at things through our ego. And our ego convinces us very quickly that we don't need God, that we've got to do it on our own. Edging God out. We all bounce back and forth. So if you catch yourself in a human perspective or material perspective, don't beat yourself up. We all bounce in and out. I think the only person in recorded history that I've ever heard of anyway was Jesus the Christ, that did not jump in and out. He was able to stay there all the time. And he says that whatever I have done, you too can do and more. He's telling us that we can do it. We just have to open our awareness and start doing it. To deepen our awareness, we can do a couple of different things. First of all is tuning into our thoughts. Where are our thoughts? What am I thinking now? What was the last thought I just had? Tune into those thoughts, see where they are. And when you find one that's not looking at things through the spiritual perspective, spiritual understanding, acknowledge it, dismiss it. That was then, this is now. Now I'm spiritual. Kick it out. The other way is through your feelings. If you're looking at a situation and you're feeling hopeless or despair or anxious or confused or chaotic, you're not in that spiritual frame of mind. Don't beat yourself up for it. Just, look what I just learned. Let's change this. Because you can choose to be in a spiritual perspective. You can choose to be love. You can choose to be peace. And if you're looking at whatever it is that you are trying to manifest with anything other than love and peace and kindness and joy and gratitude, shift gears. This behavior of trying to solve everything through our own efforts is a learned habit. Okay? This is very important for you to hear and for you to understand and for you to claim. Everything that we do, every behavior we have, every thought that we have is a learned behavior, thought, experience. Through life, everything that's happened to us has been teaching us how to respond or how to react to life, how to think about life. And I promise you, if you were able to take the next hour and list out every thought you've had and break those down, you're going to find that a bunch of them are thoughts that you think you should have based on this situation. Because we have been taught, well, if this happens, you should feel this way. If this happens, you should react this way. If this happens, you should think this way. Nobody sat us down and did this. We didn't go through a class that said, okay, thought one or experience one, if this happens, you do this. It wasn't like that. But we watched other people do things, so we learned how to do it their way. And we either learned how to do it exactly like them or almost totally opposite of them. But we learned it. We learned these behaviors. The ones that we learned to do exactly like someone else, we did because we thought that person was brilliant in some way. They got it figured out. Well, guess what? They learned it from somebody else. And on and on and on. There are no thoughts, no reactions, no responses that you should do. Tune into your thoughts, tune into your feelings, tune into how it all aligns with the goodness that you are, with the goodness that manifestation is, with the goodness of your oneness in God, and allow that to guide. But you can't do that from a human perspective. You've got to be in this spiritual perspective. The problems in our life are a direct product of our thinking, our learned thinking. Okay? The beautiful thing about all this, if you learned it this way, you can learn it a new way. There's an old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Wrong. Wrong. You can unlearn something, and you can learn a new way. In this new way, I will never try to teach it to you. And I hope you don't allow anyone else to try to teach it to you. I hope that when you discover a thought process, a behavior, a habit, or something that's not serving highest good for you and this world, you allow that to go away. You tune in through your spiritual perspective to the guidance and the information and the wisdom that is available to you because you are part of one mind. You tune in there and you learn again. You learn new. Neville Goddard and Tim Grimes wrote, "Without thoughts, there are no problems." I absolutely love that. Because it is our thoughts that cause every problem we have. It's our thoughts that respond or react to the problem. It's our thoughts that tell us, well, we should be this way instead of that way. It's our thoughts that create every problem we have. They follow up by saying, all your stress and all your negative feelings originate in your thinking. So think about that. Without thoughts, there are no problems. All your stress and all your negative feelings originate in your thinking. First time I read that was many years ago, and I did spend some time fighting it. No, that can't be. That can't. But no matter how hard I fought it, I couldn't undo the truth of it. I found it to be true. When we calm our thoughts, we more easily realize and experience oneness. In this oneness, we realize power. We realize presence. We realize wisdom. We don't find that through the human perspective with this constant barrage of thoughts going, well, what if, do it this way, what if we do? This chaotic thinking does nothing but block clarity. Calming our mind allows us to see through this spiritual perspective. Seeing through this spiritual perspective calms our mind. So they work with each other. So when you feel your mind just going crazy, when you feel that chaotic thinking kicking in, time out. Breathe. Calm. And allows you to see with the eyes of truth. Tune into your feelings as well. Like I said, these are great indicators of where you are mentally. And it's mentally, when we get that straightened out, we can get into this spiritual perspective because it's a choice. Like I said, the only person I've ever heard of that was just there was Jesus the Christ. We can be there, but for us, until we create such incredibly beautiful, powerful habits that keep us there, we have to continually make choices to be there. So tune into your feelings. If you're feeling, look at it as a scale, 1 to 10. Wonderful being 10 and pitiful being one, find out where you are on that scale and make a shift. Because on the lower end of that scale, you're in the chaotic thinking. You're in the human understanding of all that's going on. The upper end of that scale brings you into the spiritual. If you are feeling bad, you have to change something in order to understand that spiritual perspective. You've got to change the way you're looking, because as long as you're feeling bad, you're focused on feeling bad. On the other end of the spectrum, as long as you're feeling good, the human perspective stays out of it a bit. The spiritual perspective is much easier to attain. So just remember, if you can imagine it, or wish it, or desire it, it's already manifest. The experience of that you wish for, desire, want, the experience of that is already available. And it's a choice to experience it. And you do that through your visioning, through your meditation, through your breathing, through your beliefs and your attitudes. Relaxed meditation is a beautiful tool that you can use in all of this. Relaxed meditation, relaxed manifestation has to be honed. It's not something that you can say, I got it, done. Well, I say you can't do that. If you do it, let me know how. For me, it's something I've got to practice. And for me, it's something that I have forgotten to practice over the past quite some time. That's why this was so important for me to bring this to you guys. So just practice it, learn it, focus on and relax into the love of God that is your truth. Okay? Once you do this, once you start doing it, and well, maybe as a tool to help you do it even, relax into gratitude. Because I promise you, if you're grateful, ain't nothing going to stop you from having the experience. So relax into gratitude. Florence Scovel Shinn. If you've never read her work, do so. She has some beautiful work. She said, if you want to change, relax. So move into the spiritual perspective and be indifferent to anything that contradicts it. It'll take practice, but you can do it. Next week, we're going to continue with our series about manifesting through relaxation with a talk about divine economy. This will be interesting because I've forgotten what this one's all about. I did before I read it again to make sure it's something I wanted to present. But anyway, divine economy. Let's close with prayer. Father God, we often allow the circumstances of life to dictate our experience and even our belief about reality. This practice has limited our experience of life and our knowing wholeness and oneness in you. We broaden our view of this life experience by knowing divine wholeness is the only true experience, and we choose to see this life, all of life, through our spiritual perspective. We know we are one in you, God. We recognize the omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniscience of you. We turn our attention and focus to the truth around us that is found in a greater experience through our spiritual perspective. As one with you, God, we have the strength, courage, support, guidance, patience, and love that is needed to seek the wholeness of every situation and to live life through love. Knowing this prayer is already made manifest, we say thank you, God, and so it is. Amen.